Sometimes the best approach in life is to just keep things simple. Why add extra complexity to your already hectic life? Yes, that's right. I'm using life as a metaphor for your planted aquarium. Truthfully, I'm actually a big fan of both complex and simple planted tanks, but today I'm going to help David simplify his 9-gallon Fluval Flex. He's currently running it with CO2, FERTs, and his lights boosted all the way up to the top, which helps get really great plant growth, but also requires a lot of upkeep, which David ain't down with. His goal is to have something that requires less water changes, less trimming, less equipment, and more space to watch his fish swim around. Since I have the same tank at home and he's a big fan of how I have it set up, I'm basically going to just replicate what I got going on there. So follow along as I walk you through the simple process of simplifying your planted tank. So the first step is pretty straightforward. All I'm doing here is pulling everything out of this tank. These plants are coated in algae. At a later point in time, I might scrub them down and reuse them for another project, at least some of these broadleaf plants. But look at all this stuff that's getting kicked up everywhere. This soil has got tons of nutrients getting kicked up into the water column. So I'm going to want to clear everything out and then drain the tank completely down to get a fresh new start. This bucket of water that's full of all this gunk here, this is terrific for houseplants. David's got a ton of houseplants and they are going to love this water. Alright, so now that I got the tank drained down and scrubbed all the algae off, it's time to get started with the new design. And instead of having a whole layer of soil at the bottom this time, what I'm going to do is take these 2 mesh bags, which are filled with soil from the previous setup that's got tons of beneficial bacteria in it. That way we won't have to wait for the nitrogen cycle to complete. The tank will already be cycled essentially. And then I'm going to cap it with some sand. Reason that I cap it with sand is because I like the way it looks aesthetically. It's a nice, clean, simple, fresh looking layout. A lot of people will tell you that you need to cap any sort of aquarium soil with sand to prevent the nutrients from leaching, and I don't agree with that perspective. I've got plenty of tanks with this aquarium soil that's not capped with sand, and there's not a ton of nutrients being leached into the water column. Another thing is this sand is permeable, like water can flow through it. Otherwise, having beneficial bacteria in this soil wouldn't make a difference if it was completely separated from the water column. And with that thought process, I would imagine that nutrients are able to leach back and forth between the water column and the soil and vice versa. And then I slope the sand up towards the back. There needs to be a decent amount of sand, like a couple inches thick, where we're going to be planting things, and that's only where the soil is in the back. Then I lay out some river stones in kind of a horseshoe pattern coming from the back and randomize it a little bit towards the front. I leave space on both sides because that's where I'm going to be putting leaves. Now, since the sand is fairly thick and these sticks are pretty small, I'm just going to jab them into the soil, and that should hold them in place. If your sticks are large enough, then they're going to be really buoyant, and the weight of the sand won't be enough to hold them down. You'll have to use some sticks, or you'll have to use some stones on top of the sticks to weigh them down. And as confident as I was, at least one of these sticks ended up floating when I filled the tank. And so I had to go back and weigh them down with stones. So you should probably just do that from the start. And then I'm only going to be using Pogostamen stellatus octopus in this tank. It's such a fast growing wispy plant. The leaves are really delicate, but they also do a great job at absorbing nutrients because of how fast this plant grows. So there's maybe about 8 clippings in here, and they're just going to fill out. Every time one of these heads gets clipped, 2 heads will grow from the stem, and in no time this tank will fill out. Filling any tank, make sure to be really slow. I love my faucet adapted hose. It's such a great way to very, very slowly fill a tank. If you pour buckets of water in here, there's really no way to safely do it without kicking up all this sand. Oh, there you go. There's that stick that came up, so I'm just resting that stone on top of it, and that should do the trick. I'm not entirely sure what kinds of sticks these are. I think they're pine. I just collect stuff when I'm out hiking with my dogs. I don't pull bark off of these, and the only time that's backfired is when I had some juniper. If you live in the South, I believe you guys call that cedar, but the juniper bark is kind of scaly. That's how you can identify it. And it's a little bit stinky after being in the water for a couple weeks. I wouldn't say that it smells horrible. It's not like you know, gas station bathroom or something, but it's kind of a weird natural odor. Is definitely strong, and so I did end up pulling those branches out, even though my fish and shrimp seem to be fine. I just don't like that smell. So don't look for scaly branches. That's my tip. And then one last final touch for this aquarium are some leaves. I collected these leaves from my backyard. I do it every fall, and then I just hold on to them throughout the year. That way I don't have to order leaves online. It seems kind of silly to pay for leaves that already exist in my backyard. A little wasteful on money and shipping materials and all that stuff. One thing I will say is, depending on where you live, they might go around and spray for mosquitoes. So I know the city I live in Colorado, Fort Collins, Colorado, they spray for mosquitoes. So this truck goes by and gasses plants and trees and shrubs and stuff in the front yard, basically. So I only collect stuff from the back of my house where that spray can't reach, and I don't use pesticides back there personally. These leaves are really cool. They're just some oak leaves, aspen, and maple. Seems like the critters like the maple. They always get eaten before the oak and aspen leaves. And the leaves are a great addition to any tank. They provide extra hiding spots for shrimp and other bottom dwellers, and extra surface area for biological film to grow on. This is an excellent food source for shrimp. It will really bring your shrimp breeding to the next level. It also helps to bring down the pH of an aquarium, which is good because we have relatively high pH in our tap water. And then I'm not 100% on whether or not this is true, but I've heard they have beneficial microbial properties, like they are essentially an antibiotic and they help to boost the fish's immune system. I don't really know if that's true, but the tanks that I put leaves in, I do notice that things seem to be healthy. So I also like the way they look. Really helps to just add a natural finish to this tank. And that's all I got for this simplifying the Fluval Flex today. Let me know if you have any questions. Drop a comment if you enjoyed today's video, or if you learned anything, or if you disagree with me. Always fun to hear about that. Until next time, see ya.